Hi there, listener. This is episode 100 of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. My name is Ian Willoughby. This time out, my guest is Mason Parker. Last year, Mason and a group of other US investors bought American football club the Prague Lions. It's the only Czech team in the burgeoning European League of Football. But why does he feel this is the right time to back the sport in Europe? And just how far can the Prague Lions go? I discuss these questions and more with the Texan-born businessman at the ground where the team trains for this edition of Prague Talk. Mason, my first question for you, what's your own background and what led you here to Prague?
Well, I grew up in Texas, but I've spent the last 20 years of my life and career working in New York City, and I spent a lot of time in Europe. I left a career in finance. I'd worked for Deutsche Bank for 20 years in October of 2022, specifically to go find my own projects and work on them. Someone had reached out to me. They knew I invested in random projects and I was a fan of sports. And so someone reached out to me to see if I would potentially be a small minority investor in this team. And I did some homework, my kind of desktop diligence from the States, and I got excited about it and decided to take a trip last June to visit the team right before their first game of last season.
So you acquired the Prague Lions last year, a year after the club joined the relatively new European League of Football. What was it that excited you about the project here?
I got very excited about the concept of a pan-European gridiron football league. I grew up playing soccer in the States, and in my lifetime I've seen it gone from a youth and participation-driven sport to big business. And I feel that I saw a bit of an opportunity for an analogy here with gridiron football in Europe, especially with the popularity of NFL games in Germany in particular and in the UK. When I came to look at the team just as a potential minority investment, I found out that they had financial difficulties and didn't really have the capital to compete in a continental Premier League. So that is what led to the opportunity for me to take over the team by putting some of my own capital in and some of my friends. I have some friends and family investors. We put capital in, and from my perspective, being able to have control of the team, I have the time, I enjoy Europe, and I'm able to relocate here. So all those together created this opportunity, which I thought was valuable.
One of the other investors is a member of the metal band Motley Crue. How did he come on board?
I am connected to a group of friends and investors in Nashville, and they have a very good network in Nashville. And the short answer is that's how I came across Vince Neil and Devontae Parker, who's an NFL player, both of whom invested in the team. They were both brought to me by a common friend, and they got excited about the concept for the same reasons that I did. And for a lot of American celebrities or minor celebrities, sports ownership has become a bit of a trend. Ryan Reynolds and I can't remember the other actor's name who acquired Wrexham in the UK, and so it's appealing to people who have a bit of a following on Instagram to be involved. It also helps grow a European fan base for some of these people.
I was reading that you have invested about $2 million so far. What has that gone on?
So it cost us a little over $500,000 to finish last season, which was the deal that we made with the league, that we needed to complete the season, which we did. In the off season, October and November, we built a good budget. We were able to build a very good budget because we'd actually been paying the bills for the second half of the 2023 season, so we knew how much things would cost. It wasn't a lot of speculating. And based on that budget, I went out to a group of friends and family investors. We have about 10, maybe 12. I'd have to do a count, but between 10 and 12 investors. And with that, we raised a little over $1 million. And some of that's been spent because we've already bought helmets and uniforms, but largely that funds the budget for this season and next.
Why do you think now the time is ripe for American football in Europe?
American football is more popular in the States even than ever before. Jumping into this project, and my background is really in renewables, sustainability, renewable power, and renewable building products. And the project that I was working on prior to this one was a renewable diesel business. And one of the things that I found very challenging about that, while I'm excited about sustainable technology, it's become very politicized and polarizing. And no matter who you talk to when you're trying to raise money for anything that has a sustainability angle, you end up having a political conversation, especially when there are subsidies involved from the government, when they're trying to incentivize investment in renewable technologies. So I found that very off-putting. And so one of the things that I think I like about this project, and possibly is also what's driving its popularity, is its ability to remain relatively apolitical. There have been some incidents. There was a player who kneeled during the national anthem, and that upset some people. But we've largely kept politics out of the sport, and I think that's helped. In the U.S., Nielsen Ratings measures the broadcast, the over-the-air broadcasts. I don't have the exact data in front of me, but if you go back 5 years, there might have been 60 to 65 of the top 100 broadcasts were football. Not just NFL Pro, college football as well. But there was another 30 or 35 of other sports, State of the Union, the Oscars. That number has gone down and down and down, non-football events. And in fact, for 2022, the number was something like in the 80s. 82 out of 100 were football events, and then the numbers came out, I think, in January or February for 23, and it jumped to 93. So in the U.S., out of the top 100 most viewed broadcasts of the year, there were only 7 that weren't football, which kind of blows the mind a little bit. Back in 2007, the Jacksonville Jaguars started playing in London, and they developed a very good brand and a following there. And I think the NFL wisely saw that they could grow an audience overseas, and that means more revenue. Since then, the NFL has continued to expand its international marketing and now plays games every year in Germany, for example. Last season, there were 2 consecutive weeks, not preseason, during the regular season, 2 consecutive weeks with NFL games in Frankfurt, and they were all big sellouts and big events. With the NFL putting that kind of money into the sport in Europe, that grows the popularity. So I think that helps our timing. I hate to say it because it sounds a little trite, but the Taylor Swift effect is real. Kansas City Chiefs are one of the teams that play in Germany, so they're marketing their brand already there, and it happens to be that one of their star players is dating Taylor Swift. Czech children know who Taylor Swift is. And then the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, go on to win the Super Bowl and all the associated conspiracy theories in the U.S. around it. But I think that that definitely widens the overall awareness of the sport in Europe. So I think that's hopeful too.
And does the American Football League support the ELF in any way, or does it see it as a rival?
I have quite a few friends, contacts, player agents who were at the NFL Combine not long ago, which is their big event, looking at new talent. And I wasn't there, but I did hear that there was quite a bit of buzz about the ELF at the NFL Combine. So people are aware that we're doing this and that it's going on. I've also seen clips from our games highlighted on ESPN's SportsCenter in the States, which normally is dedicated to American sports. So the fact that ESPN is paying attention, I think, helps too. As far as the NFL's official position on the ELF, I'm not aware that they have one. I don't believe they really officially acknowledge us. They probably see us as a bit of a competitor, I believe, and from conversations of people who know people within the NFL, that there is a desire by the NFL to capture revenue in Europe. And I think that if they could put a conference in Europe, they probably would. You could probably come up with all the issues with that, scheduling alone, especially during the playoffs. If you had a continental team playing a California team, that's quite a bit of travel. There's environmental concerns, the stress on the athletes, etc. So I think they have a bit of a problem on how to monetize Europe. And right now they're doing so by flying whole teams over and playing a few events in Germany and the UK. They think they're adding Spain. And that's great for us. So from my standpoint, I think they should continue doing that. I think it grows the overall sport. We're in a different season that they really start in August, right when we're wrapping up our regular season. So you could almost make a case for year-round football. So I don't see them really as a competitor. I think they probably think we're just too small to be taken seriously by them at this point.
The Prague Lions players are now in preseason training. Who are the players? Where are they from? Are they pro, semi-pro?
The way this league is set up, we recruit our players from within the country, and we get to recruit Czech players and also Slovakian players, count them as domestic, so they don't take import slots. Each team has 10 import slots, 4 of which can be American. It's actually North American, so Canada and Mexico gets counted, and 6 more from the rest of the world, making 10 imports total. We filled our import slots. Our 4 Americans we did a regression analysis because we're math nerds, and the teams with the winningest records have Americans at quarterback and receiver. We split our 4 American imports, 2 for offense and 2 for defense. And they're all here now, as you said. We're socializing. They're learning their way around town, and next week we'll start practicing together as a team. But the use of the import slots, to create both, mentorship, culture, and also get the skills needed to win games is an important part of managing these teams.
We're speaking at the soccer club Slavoj Vyšehrad, where the Prague Lions train. Do they also play here, or where are your games held?
Our games are at Viktoria Žižkov in Prague 3. We may move to a couple other stadiums this season, so some of that is still being finalized. Our first game on May 26th will be at Viktoria Žižkov. We played most of our games there last season as well. I like this practice facility. It's got nice space here, and the owner's very supportive of us. We own a container there, which we get to keep our stuff in, so this is great. A lot of our players that we house live nearby, so it's a good. I like this neighborhood for having our training grounds. But in terms of our stadium, Prague 3 is really great. There's a lot of expats there. It's very centrally located next to the main train station, and it's big enough. In the longer term, I'd like to outgrow it and play in either the Sparta Stadium or the Slavia Stadium, but we've got to get there. But for now, we're very happy playing in Prague 3.
Clubs in the ELF are in several European countries, including Germany, of course, France, Italy, Spain. Do all those travel costs represent a significant burden for what must be still a relatively small sport in Europe?
The travel costs aren't really that bad. We're very fortunate here in Prague because we're so centrally located. We will travel to Hamburg for one game and actually play it in Lübeck, so we've been going further than Hamburg this season, but they're not in our conference. That's an interconference matchup, and we won't necessarily play them every season. So for us, travel costs are really pretty reasonable. We take buses, we don't fly. As the league expands and the teams get further away, I talk about Madrid sometimes just because it is quite far, and they'll probably have to fly to some of their games. Each team's budget will be slightly different. Stadium costs vary greatly from city to city. So for us, honestly, the cost of sending a team on a road with the travel and the accommodations and the food is about the same as the cost of hosting a game here in Prague. The difference is the Prague games, we have ticket revenue.
Most countries have a limited number of very popular sports. The Czechs already have soccer, ice hockey, winter sports. How much do you need to draw crowds in Prague? Or are most of your revenues coming from taking part in games elsewhere around Europe?
One of the things that I've liked about Prague as a market for this sport is, from my asking people, there isn't a clear third most popular sport. Clearly, football and hockey are the most popular sports here. We don't need to supplant them any more than the MLS needs to supplant Major League Baseball or the NFL in the U.S. to be very big business. You know, if third or fourth most popular slot is up for grabs, that's a perfectly good objective for me for the time being. When I do ask people what the third most popular sport is, I get quite a range. I've heard octagon and MMA, I've heard basketball, I've heard rugby, and I've heard badminton. So as far as I can tell, there's plenty of room to put on a really good show and draw a crowd. We want it to be a family-friendly event. One of the things I like about recruiting Czech players is the kids in the stadium see Czech names on the back of the players' jerseys. And I joke to some of our own staff that, our best player might be 10 years old right now because the culture is really developing, and kids, the earlier they start playing and learning the technique, the better they'll be. So we don't need to get that big. I'm a big hockey fan as well, and I used to have season tickets to the New York Rangers, which I gave up to relocate here. But I went to a Sparta match, and there was about 15,000 people in that arena, and it felt quite full, and it was very full of energy. If we could get to one of those two larger stadiums, Slavia or Sparta, the ones they play in, and get 10, 12, 15,000 people, I think we'd be doing really well. And that's kind of the near-term objective. We don't need to have 60,000 person crowds right now.
My final question is, Mason, where would you like to see the Prague Lions in, let's say, 10 or 15 years?
Well, within the next 10 years, if you win a championship, you get a really big ring. And I would like to have one of those within 10 years. So we're serious about this. We've got the money for it. I'm moving here. We've got some investors who are well-known, Devontae Parker, Vince Neal, and Maurice Jones-Drew, who's recently become an investor as well, and they're all influential people. So we've got backing. We've got the ability to grow our name brand, to get our brand out there and raise awareness. So within 10 years, I'd like to be filling one of the larger stadiums in Prague. And, we're a summer sport. We don't really directly compete with soccer and hockey when it comes to what you're doing this weekend. So I think that we should be one of the main attractions for the summertime in Prague.
Many thanks indeed to Mason Parker, and good luck to the Prague Lions in the new season. This has been episode 100 of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. So there are literally almost 100 other editions out there for your listening pleasure. If you're new to the pod, why not check some out and subscribe? You know it makes sense. But from me, Ian Willoughby, that's all for now, folks. Thank you very much indeed for listening to Prague Talk, and talk to you again soon.